Who else could be more suitable to give a welcome address for this Green Finance Forum as the Minister of Economics, Energy, Transport and Regional Development, Tarek Al-Wazir, who happens to be in the Green Party. Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the 4th Green Finance Forum. The Ministry of Economics of the state of Hesse initiated this forum 4 years ago and has hosted it ever since in close collaboration with the IFC. The idea was to establish a forum to foster green and sustainable finance and to create a platform for innovators in the fields of finance, academia, civil society, and politics. And this idea remains unchanged. And today we're once again gathered here, this year under the title Sustainable Finance, the New Frontier. It's not Star Trek, it's Sustainable Finance, the New Frontier. Firstly, what does the New Frontier mean, or what are the two meanings? Firstly, to urgently set a frontier for climate change with all its perceptible consequences. And during the Paris Climate Change Conference of 2015, the global community made a legally binding commitment limiting the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and I know that if you look at what happened since 2015 and the outcome of, for example, the US or the Brazilian presidential elections, it's still, I think, an important thing to remember why we did all this and to remind ourselves that there is still something like climate change going on and even going faster than we thought in 2015. So we have to do something. And if you look at the special report of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change this year, that showed that even 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming would mean, what would 1.5 degrees Celsius mean? Recognizing and drawing attention to the fact that our planet has been warming faster and with more serious consequences than previously thought. And secondly, I see sustainable finance, the new frontier, as a challenge. The EU climate targets cannot be met with public means alone. This is impossible. And this is why private funds are to be redirected towards sustainable investments and why the financial sector is set to become a strong player in the fight against climate change. Corporates, banks, insurance companies are to act in a way that is both more responsible and more sustainable. At this point, we're setting the course for factoring sustainability into the financial system. Thus, the new frontier can take a top-down approach by limiting global warming, as we urgently must, but it can also take a bottom-up route via forthcoming regulation for green and sustainable finance, imposing a floor, a minimum set of initiatives and targets that must be adhered to. Other sectors are ahead of the financial sector or are in the process of transforming as well. With its Energiewende, the switch towards renewable energy, Germany is leading the way. I don't know if you're all aware of that, but in the first half of 2018, renewable energies for the first time since the beginning of the industrial era produced more energy in Germany than brown and black coal together. So the renewables were in the first half of this year the most important source of electricity production. They account for about 37% of gross electricity consumption in Germany. And I remember 20 years ago when we started the so-called Energiewende, there were lots of people that thought that this could be the end of Germany as a strong and important country concerning production and so on. And I just say that in the last 20 years, Germany didn't become weaker but stronger. So maybe this could be an example for other countries thinking about how to change and how to somehow not only their electricity sector, but as I mentioned, means of mobility and also the financial sector. And another part of the turnaround in energy policy is to support a parallel switch in transportation methods as well, with energy and transport mutually reinforcing each other's progress towards sustainability. And just like the transport sector, the financial industry has to move towards a more climate-friendly model. And with its capacity to direct flows of capital into a direction that is socially desirable, the financial sector will become an increasingly heavyweight player. Its contribution is closely linked to that of other sectors whose activities require funding. Both the activities and the international discussion concerning green and sustainable finance have markedly gained momentum during recent years. And a key initiative on the European level has been the EU Action Plan on Financing Sustainable Growth. This action plan is what today's first panel, the EU's action plan and its challenges, will focus on. And it's my intention to anticipate this discussion. It's not my intention to anticipate this discussion, but the most pressing action of the mentioned plan is that of introducing a unified language of what is considered to be sustainable, the so-called taxonomy. With this taxonomy, we're setting the course for factoring sustainability into the financial system. Setting the course is paramount to ensuring that sustainable finance will be met with acceptance in the financial industry and to enable its effective contribution towards achieving our goals. And in doing so, the focus lies on climate-related regulation for now. In my opinion, we need to ensure that this taxonomy is not only serves the purposes of a sustainable niche, but that it can also boost responsible investment volumes in the mainstream. But these are not the only reasons why the transformation of the financial industry into a sustainable industry is no easy task. First of all, also a sustainable investment needs a competitive yield level. We know that in overall, well, I think that sustainability at the end is the only answer to reach a competitive yield level on the long run. But the key to competitive yield should be a diversified portfolio and a long-term investment horizon. And now that I have mentioned it, the gap between the long-term refinancing needs of sustainable projects and the more short-term time horizons of investors is an issue that also needs to be addressed. We also need to find a way to integrate ESG aspects into portfolio and risk management as they are practiced today. Sustainability needs to be translated not only into certain financial products and labels, but also into general risk models as well as credit and investment decisions. Against the background of these challenges, numerous players in finance, academia and civil society have joined forces with the Hessian Ministry of Economics to form the Green and Sustainable Finance Cluster Germany. With my ministry being responsible both for implementing the Energiewende in the state of Hesse and for Frankfurt's role as a leading financial center, it has naturally assumed an active role in the cluster's formation. The cluster's goal is to provide practical support to the process of transformation towards a sustainable financial industry in Germany, taking into account the strength and unique nature of the German banking sector with its three-pillar system and decentrality. Outside Germany, the cluster aims to be a constructive voice in the international discussion surrounding green and sustainable finance. And I'm delighted that for the first time, the renowned ICMA will hold its Green and Social Bond Principles annual general meeting and conferences in Frankfurt in June of 2019 in collaboration with the cluster. On a European level, 2 members of the cluster were selected to form part of the technical expert group on sustainable finance, which supports the EU Commission in the implementation of the action plan. And on a national level, the cluster wants to develop practical solutions for implementing sustainability in the business models of various financial market players. In pursuit of this goal, it supports players in integrating climate-related financial disclosures into their business in line with the TCFD's recommendations. Last but not least, the cluster has already produced 2 publications, a baseline report and a policy roadmap. And another player that has set ambitious goals for itself is the state of Hesse itself. To provide pension provisions, it has invested in equities included in the Eurostoxx ESG Leaders 50 Sustainability Index. And as per end of June 2018, the pension fund amounted to a quite substantial amount of 3.3 billion euros. 30% thereof is invested in equities. And we're now discussing with other German states, Baden-Württemberg and North Rhine-Westphalia, how to reallocate our equity investments, because all the German states are building up pension funds, and we are looking for a provider to build and periodically manage 2 sustainable equity indices. In addition, the state of Hesse has developed an integrated climate protection plan to turn climate neutral by 2050, with its state administration becoming carbon neutral as early as 2030. So what we try is not only to tell others what they could do, but also to do it for our own administration and everything that has to do with ourselves, because we think that good examples as best practice models can show others at the end that you don't get poorer but even stronger if you try to be sustainable and somehow green. As you can see, a lot has been achieved since the first Green Finance Forum in 2015. So I hope that we seize this momentum and drive the switch to green finance forward, not only in European regulatory initiatives, but also in assessing the risks and rewards for the financial industry. It is dialogue that is decisive. I hope that we'll engage in stimulating discussions that will inspire and strengthen a sustainable financial industry in Germany. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Al-Wazir, I know you're a busy man, especially in these days. Any secrets on that, how it's going? No. Okay. Thought I caught you in this occasion.
Maybe we have to explain to the audience that is not familiar with state politics that we had elections about, 3 weeks ago, and we're still trying to figure out who forms the coalition for the next 5 years.
That's how it is. Very good. See, got a brief political entertainment here as well. Anyway, so green seems to me a pretty popular color right now. You just mentioned the election. In favor of an honest answer, and I would really appreciate an honest answer, how much is this excitement about green finance, green politics, the Green Party right now? How much is this protest, and how much is this really a swing to green issues? What would you say?
Well, I think that, of course, the weaknesses of the others are somehow an explanation for own strength. It's in business, same thing as in politics. So, of course, the Green Party in Germany is quite strong now because the grand coalition is in the state it is. That's one explanation. But the other explanation, because there are other opposition parties also, and they're not gaining as much strength as the Green Party does, I think that all the issues of climate change, of sustainability, of somehow giving answers to questions for that really many people are really thinking about the future, and so maybe it's both.
So it's more mainstream now, as you mentioned before?
It's more mainstream as it was, and you know, if I think about what discussions we had 20 years ago when we started energy transition, there was the former CEO of RWE, of you know, the big energy company of North Rhine-Westphalia, who said that it's more likely to grow. I don't know what he said. What did he say? Well, at the end, he said it's impossible for a country with the strength of Germany, a country with a big industry, a big car sector, and so on, to rely on on renewables. And you know, many people thought that at the end, if you start a transition like this, you somehow will, well, take the risk of bringing Germany backwards. And if you open the newspapers right now, and even, you know, just 3-4 weeks ago, there was a whole issue of Handelsblatt that said the problem of the German federal government is that they are not acting towards climate change, and that this is a problem, and these are chances and possibilities also economically that are not taken. So I think the discussion totally changed.
And especially after this hot summer, I guess a lot of people got a glimpse of that, what it could be global warming. Because the Brexit discussions, just yesterday we had the news on that, and yeah, I mean, Brexit brings, let's call it a reorientation, right, of the financial markets in Europe. How do you see Frankfurt positioned in this race when it comes to this reorientation, especially when it comes to green finance?
Well, first of all, although we're talking about opportunities for Frankfurt as the most important financial marketplace in the Eurozone, in continental Europe, I want to say that I really regret the Brexit decision, because at the end it's a step backwards. Here in Frankfurt, in the Frankfurt-Rhein-Main area, we have some chances of, you know, somehow, yeah, well, somehow to somehow get profit from reallocation, relocation of financial. Of the financial market, but at the end it's a step backwards. Concerning Frankfurt, in the last nearly 2.5 years, we have about 30 different banks, financial institutions, and so on, relocating or opening branches here that would have done this in London before or coming from London. So we see that Frankfurt is getting more important. And concerning the green and sustainable finance sector, That's why we founded this cluster, because we really see that this field is getting more important, and we also have the financial institutions, the banks, the universities that see that this field is getting so important that they are somehow engaging themselves in this field of green and sustainable finance. And I think that it's also a great chance for business at the end. Mm-hmm. And we cannot fund it publicly alone, what we have to do. So it has to be a cooperation between the state, the federal level, the European Union, and at the end, the private sector.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Al-Wazir, thank you very much. That's why we're all here today at the Green Finance Forum. Thank you for your time today. Vielen Dank.